So yeah, hello everyone. As was said already, I'm Andrea. I work as a game producer at Nordcurrent, and today I'm going to be speaking about game design instead of producing, because I'm not that good at producing actually. So yeah, where does the fun in video games come from? Well, that's a question for a little later in the presentation. I will start with another more simple question. What is a game? Well, pretty simple. A game is something you play with. Okay, obvious. However, you do play with toy train and you do play with chess. Now, what's the difference between those two kind of entertainment? The first one is a toy. The toy train is a toy. Wow. Well, the second one is a game. Why is a game? Well, there are two main differences between a game and a toy. The first one is that the game has rules, has a structure. So in chess, I can move pieces only in a certain way. On the grid, I have to follow turns, and pieces are captured in a certain way. And the second main difference is the special rules, say, how you win, the outcome. So one of the two players playing chess end up winning the game. So a game is something you play with rules and an objective. However, literature can help us because it's not that easy to define a game. A game is a rule-based formal system with variable and quantifiable outcome. The player exerts effort in order to influence the outcome. Those are the words of Jasper Joule in the game The Player and the World. A game is a system defined by rules that results in a quantifiable outcome. Katie Sellen and Eric Zimmerman in Rules of Play. All games share four defining traits: goals, rules, feedback system, and voluntary participation. Jane McGonigal, reality is broken. So, a very simplistic way of defining games, an extremely simplified view of games. They are something you play with rules and with an objective. Now, rules are called in games mechanics, and I want to make a quick stop on this topic, as I heard the term mechanics used being to refer to almost anything in games. So I'm gonna talk about this paper here, MDA Framework, which stands for Mechanics, Dynamics, and Aesthetics. And it was first written to try and provide a formal approach to analyzing games. And in particular, it goes very deep in how the player interacts with the game, which is called an artifact in this case. But this paper could take a talk of its own, so I'm just gonna glide over it. Just you know that mechanics are single rules, single actions, single control mechanisms that the player interacts with. So, for example, shuffling is a mechanic, is one single rule. Turns are a mechanic, a single rule again. Now that the premises are done, on to the main point of the talk. It is from this book here, Theory of Fun, which is written by Ralph Koster. He worked at Sony. He worked on games like Ultima Online and Star Wars Galaxies. And so, to get up to speed, let's get a couple of words on the human brain, how it works. So, we are machines that defy entropy, and as such, we evolved to survive, to keep defining entropy. And to do that, we need energy. Energy to move, energy to create reproductory cells, etc., etc., etc. So we need a lot of energy. And the best way to have the most energy for us is to use the less possible. And our brain is, despite its size, the thing that consumes the most energy in our body. So we develop various tricks to help us use less energy while using the brain, such as cognitive biases, for example, anchoring, for example, the status quo bias, for example, the confirmation bias. But again, those could take talk of their own as well. And chunking. Those are the words of chunking of the author. We rarely look at the real word. We instead recognize something we have chunked and leave it at that. Chunking is a process of subdividing and storing the information in our brain. It is done by getting rid of the noise that usually layers over the information. So for example, when I go to work for the first time, the path that I do to work is layered with noise, with cars, with people I need to avoid, with cracks in the road, maybe with ice, with a lot of noise for my brain that is covering, is mocking, let's say, the information of the path. And so while I go on this path more and more, my brain starts to get rid of the noise, get rid of the smoke, get rid all of this information, useless information, and gets the idea of the path. So point A to point B as a line. Yes, it allows us to go on autopilot. So once the path would be chunked, we won't need to think, oh, I need to go left here, I need to go right here. We will just, let our legs do the work and think about our hassles that we're going to face at work, or about the argument that we just had before leaving the apartment. So let's say we want to chunk, say, jazz, because chunking, yes, applies to paths, applies to a lot of things, also to music genres. We, as 21st century people, we are accustomed to pop music, so to the AABA structure, to the supertonic, to a very few key changes throughout the song. Whereas jazz is different in this sense, as it has complex chords, it has unusual tempo, and various changes of key throughout the songs. So when I start listening to jazz for the first time, as it is a very complex genre to get into, I might not understand exactly what is going on. I might be beating my foot at fourth time, whereas the song is going on seventh, fourth, and complex chords add sounds that I'm not used to hearing usually, and the key just changes randomly for me. But I'm determined to listen to jazz, so I listen to one more song, two more songs, three more songs, album, three album, and slowly I will start to subconsciously recognize the patterns that go with jazz music. So I might start recognizing the changes of key, anticipating them. I might start recognizing the tempo patterns, and I may even start recognizing note sequences like the Devil's Triton, which is more or less the equivalent of supertonics in pop music, but again, kind of more deep arguments for another time. So at this point, I can comfortably listen to jazz, having chunked it, and I subconsciously enjoy it. However, there is still a long way to go before grokking jazz. Grokking is an neologism used for the first time in this novel here, Stranger in a Strange Land, and it is a word that aliens on Mars use. Well, actually it has a lot of meanings. It means to hate, it means to love, it means to eat, to drink, to fear, but most importantly, it means to understand. It means to understand something deeply, something intimately, something so good that I start to blend with the thing I'm understanding, and that thing starts to blend with me. It is more that it is at a much deeper level than chunking, and it is responsible, for example, for muscle memory, which, to be fair, is not really memory of the muscles, for instinct and common sense. To make an example in your life, let's think about driving. I think we have some stick drivers here, and well, you will know that when there's a car in front of you that suddenly brakes, you brake obviously not to hit it, but automatically you will press the clutch so that the car doesn't stop. You don't think about it. You have trained your brain to do it so good in the past while learning to drive that now it is something that comes automatically, not because your brain subconsciously know that the car will stop if you don't press the clutch, but we have learned so good to do this that it now is hard-coded and is automatic for us. So now, about games. I mean, all fun and dandy, but let's speak about games. That's why we're here. We like games because they're easy to chunk. They usually don't have all of that noise that usually is layering the information that we need to chunk, as they are representations of reality. They are not actual reality. They are an interpretation of the designers, artists, the people who work on them. And as such, it's easier for us to strip them of those noise and get the information. Also, they are a safe environment. So, for example, if you find yourself in a burning house in real life, you have one shot at getting it good. If you find yourself in a burning house in a video game, you have plenty of attempts to get it good and don't die in the house in the next attempt. So, we are free to experiment, to go and try how the mechanics works, etc., etc., etc. Those instead are words of Bryce Morrison on Grokking. He was published on Game Developer, formerly Gamma Sutra, and he says this about Grokking. To grok a verb is when a player has completely mastered a design. They get it, they understand it, they know it intimately backwards and forwards. They understand how the early part of the design works, how it is working now, as they're experiencing it, and they also already know how it's going to play out in the future. They can manipulate the game to their will and overcome all challenges around the skill they have grokked. So, Grokking games, what does it actually mean? For example, singing a sword is a pretty easy mechanic to understand. Hit a button, in this case in particular Zelda 1986. The character thrusts forward a sword. Easy to understand, more difficult to master, let's say. There are plenty of details to be mastered, so anticipation frames, range, recovery. All of those details are to be grokked, to be learned in the early parts of the game. Whereas later in more advanced stages, I will think about positioning, I will think about what enemy has the priority to be killed, and I don't know, mana, stamina, etc., etc., etc. Not the case in this game, but I used it to start on action games. Another pretty easy mechanic to understand at first is reloading. Hit the reload button and the magazine will be refilled. However, there are a lot of details to be mastered. Each weapon will have a different timing. What happens if I change weapon while reloading? Does it change if I reload with an empty magazine or with a half-full one? All of those details are learned not through tutorials but through experimentation. And as I play more and more and more and reload more and more and more, I will start thinking about it less and less and less, and start thinking instead about positioning, again about tactics, etc. This, however, doesn't stop at mechanics. It goes up to dynamics, following the MDA framework, or roles, in this case, of the mid laner. So say you are using a champion you're not familiar with, in this case is League of Legends, for those non-toxic players here. You might be a very good Zed player, say, an assassin, and you're trying out a mage for the first time. Now, you might not be so good with specific skills of the champion, but you are, if you're good as a player, you probably are also a good mid laner player. So you know that Pantheon is an early game champion, so you need to stay safe in the early part and can go on it later. You know how to farm properly, you know when to expect enemy ganks, you know how to roam effectively. even though you're not that good of a player with the mage you're using, if this is the case. And as well, with another example, we go with Overwatch. Say you're not that good a player with support you're using now, but if you are a player that usually plays support, you will know that timing is important on your skills. You have to wait for team fights for use them. You know that you have to position yourself behind in the backline. You know that the tank is usually to be healed and the DPS is usually to be buffed. And this scales up to whole genres of games. When opening up a new FPS game, you might not be so good at the specific mechanics of the game, but you will have a sense of where the players are on the map. You will know whether which arm is useful in which occasion. And you will also have an understanding of how the control scheme works. Another example of this is strategy games. Maybe you're not that good of a player on Stellaris than you are on Civilization, but you will know that you need to think in advance, you know, about strategies to win, about expanding, about alliances. Again, maybe you're not that good on the meta, so you don't know which civilizations and which maybe buildings are the best ones, but that's something that grows with you while you play the game, even if you have grokked the genre. Now, to sum up what we've said so far, fun is one of the many chemical reactions that happens in our brain. That creates pleasure. So, for example, eating chocolate creates pleasure because it has an high energy intake. Having an orgasm creates pleasure as it needed for reproduction. And grokking information lets us use less energy and have a more fast response time when using that skill we've grokked. So, in a sentence, fun in video games is a psychological response triggered by the learning process. Now, I know what you might be thinking. When I think of fun, I think of something like this. And this to me doesn't seem like learning. And this is people chatting, having fun, right? However, fun is not funny, pun not intended. Fun looks more like this, looks more like focus, like attention, like immersion on the action one is doing. And even though the couch games do provide that the context for the classical idea of fun we have, it's again a context, overstructure that we usually that comes after the more deeper concept of fun that all games try to achieve, which is again concentration and focus. Now, besides fun, there are two other emotions, let's call them, which is boredom and frustration. And I think that this concept in particular is very well explained in the flow theory by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who unfortunately left us on last October. And this is a pretty widely known theory, so I'm not gonna go too deeply in this. It says that given specific conditions, so a challenge equivalent to the skill of the user, player, subject, whatever, he can enter this mental state called flow state, which has many characteristics, like it is a state of complete involvement and complete focus, complete attention. It is characterized by a sense of timelessness and a clear feedback on a clear idea on how the performance is going. We use it in progression systems, level design, encounter design, enemy design, you name it. And as it can be easy to define the skill of a player as their action times, the decision making, the forethinking, and the challenge as those characteristics of their opponent, or in case of action games, enemies number, damage, attack speed, range, etc. it can be more difficult to not define, but quantify boredom and frustration. So let's say, let's take in consideration two situations, one boring situations like mindless grinding. I need to get the super weapon because I will be glorified eternally, but the boss that drops it is way below my level, so I just reload the level continuously to get this weapon. And I am bored because, again, this doesn't really pose a challenge to me. In the second case, fair matchmaking, say I just downloaded a new FPS game and for whatever reason, maybe not enough players or just fair matchmaking, I am put up against players way above my skill level, and they end up how to say this in a polite way? They end up beating me very, very badly. So, what do those two situations have in common is that the player is not learning anything. In the first case, well, because there's not much to learn, the information that I receive is not useful for me because I already getting the best outcome possible. And in the second case, because the information is so much that I perceive it as noise. I know I could be aiming better. I know that maybe I should have turned the corner in that moment. And maybe I don't even have the right loadout. But in this moment, everything is just perceived as noise. I am just not understanding anything of what I could be better. I don't know where to start. So, to sum it up, games are something you play with rules and a goal. Chunking and grokking create hard-coded behaviors, and fun happened as we grok from mechanics to genres. The fun is between boredom and frustration, and it is a necessary ingredient for flow in games, because yes, they are friends, but fun and flow are not the same things. So I want to leave you with another quote of a famous game designer, Sid Meier, the designer of Civilization. A game is a series of interesting choices. Thank you.
Telling you, you're really popular this day. It's, I think, the most populated session of this hall, by the way, for 2 days. All right, do you have any questions here? I can pass you microphone. So.
Thank you for the talk. Since I do UX research, my question is, how do you measure fun, if you do?
How do you measure fun? You don't really. Many different persons have a different approach to games, and something a player can grok in 2 minutes must be grokked in half an hour from another different player. Usually the fun stops when there's nothing to be learned anymore. So when the player is just repeating actions without learning nothing new, then usually the fun stopped. There's not really a way to measure it, but in short, yes, that's basically it. So fun stops when nothing is to be learned anymore.
So if the GAMM is if the output is the consequence of a person feeling like skillful, feeling competent, so can we conclude that you can measure how skillful the player feels, how confident he feels, and that he's not having a lot of frustration and boredom?
So can you repeat your question, please?
Is that can we make the conclusion that a person is having fun if he feels skillful and competent and not feeling boredom and frustration at the same time?
Yes, I think it's a pretty good way of putting it. Yes, I would say it can be seen this way. So if a player is not being bored and is not being frustrated, yeah, he is having fun most of the times.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your talk. So are you saying that like visual novels and story-based games are not fun because there's no skill involved?
Well, graphic novels and narrative games, well, you don't play them for the mechanics, do you? Well, they are, yes, entertainment. I really think that in this case, in this particular case of this talk, of this analysis that Raf did, they shouldn't be considered games, as they don't really have an outcome that can vary. Narrative games provide an entertainment that is more similar to reading a book or watching a movie. Maybe you have some interactions to change the course of the story, but overall, you're not learning how to be better at something. In this case, the game. I'm not saying that games make you better at skills in your life. You are better in that particular game. But yes, in this particular taxonomy, narrative games don't really are games. So yeah, they are fun as they provide a different kind of entertainment, but they don't provide fun as strictly grokking and chunking mechanics.
Thank you.
Someone else is interested in asking? Okay. I like that you're too close.
So, thank you for the talk. And this idea, when you said that a game is no longer fun when there's nothing to be learned, like an idea came to my mind about there's a huge community of people who like to speedrun games, and there's a lot of that is usually, okay, you learn a pattern and then you just repeat, and then that would kind of, I assume by your definition, would fall into mindless grinding, but yet people do this, so you would assume they have fun. So how do you see that situation? I
see that in two ways. The first one is that the main fun that they get from the game, from that particular action, is not that they are getting better at the game. Well, okay, the second part of the answer will be they are. But first thing first, I think that the most gratification that comes when they do that is when they actually beat the record. That is what creates gratification in that case. Mostly, in my opinion. Secondly, I think they are actually learning something. Maybe not in a strict sense of mastering a mechanic, but say it's a Mario game that you're speedrunning. You're becoming more and more comfortable in the movements. I would make an analogy with playing an instrument. If you are trying over and over again a solo, a very difficult solo, say from a song, the more you try it, the more your finger become fast and precise on that particular set of movements. So I would say that is kind of following that idea of learning. So basically, increasing your muscle memory, say.
Okay, thank you for your answer.
Thank you very much for your questions. Anyone else is interested in asking something or just giving some comment? But I know you're interested in giving comment on Pine. You are. All right. Thank you very much. I think we're done with this session. Then please round of applause for Andrea.